So in today's video, what we're going to do is a couple things. We're going to get the bike cleaned up. It's quite dusty, and we don't have mud out here. It has not rained in over 150 days, so it's quite dusty out there. So it's time to get this bike cleaned up. And then after we get it all cleaned up, what we'll do is we'll do some general maintenance. We need to check things like the chain length. We need to check the cassette, make sure the pivot bolts are tight, kind of check the brakes, all that kind of fun maintenance. I think this rear tire is getting close to dying as well. We might need to replace it. We'll kind of go through everything and we'll see how it goes. So why don't you join me and we'll have some fun. So to clean the bike, I'm going to first get my compressor here set up, and I'm going to go ahead and just blow a lot of this dust out. A lot of this stuff doesn't really need to be washed. It just needs to really be wiped down. So I'll get the initial dirt off with this. Next, I'm going to go ahead and flip over this cover here. This is the cover for the motor and the battery, and it gets a lot of dust and dirt in there. So I like to take it off or pop it off and go ahead and clean that out as well. As you can tell, the easiest way to do this is flipping the bike upside down. So not something I normally do. I usually keep in the bike stand, but for this, it's actually easier to access it this way. So here we are. And you can see how dusty and that this whole thing is. So I'm just going to go ahead and spray this out and wipe it down. All right, next I'm going to go ahead and clean the chain. I use this Park Tool chain scrubber. It has this liquid. Guess it's a Bio Chain Bright CB4. I'll go ahead and attach this to the chain here. And because, if I try to run this in reverse, we have a problem here. So I'm just using this 5mm X wrench. I'll just kind of throw that in there, and that way I can actually run this backwards here. I'll go ahead and dry the chain now. All right, this is my chain length tool, and basically what you do is it checks between 0.75 and 0.5, and if it's in between those lengths, that's when you know you need to replace the chain. If it goes beyond that, if it's even more stretched out, you might have to replace the cassette as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this in. We'll see what it looks like here. So stick it in, and it's getting close, but not quite there yet. So we're still got some extra time here on the chain. All right, I want to get a closer look at the tires here, and I don't know if there's going to be enough light to see this in, but the knobs are starting to pull off here. So definitely the rear tire is just about ready to go. Let's see if I can get it from this side here. That's not too bad, but you can see this one's ready to fly off. Just a lot of wear in here, and the center is pretty much dust on this one. So we're going to go ahead and replace this tire. I happen to have a spare tire for the rear. It's not a NASA guy, it's a dissector, but it should be good. I think the front is getting worn, but it still looks a little bit better. It still has a lot of good tread on there. There is still some bad knobs on the sides, but not nearly as the back. So we can keep this one longer and go ahead and replace the rear one. All right, we'll go ahead and wash this wheel as well. Okay, instead of spraying down the whole bike, I'm just going to wipe all the remaining dust off. I normally do wash it at least once a month or so, but in general times, or if it's not really super dirty, I can get away with just wiping it down. One thing I try to do is always wipe down the stanchions and the shock after every ride. That way it keeps the seals a little bit better. All right. The bike is all wiped down, looks pretty good. Before we oil the chain, we need to put the wheel back on, but before we put the wheel back on, we need to change out that tire, so let's do that now. Easiest way to get all the air out is to remove the valve stem core here. So let's do that real quick. There we go. All right, now that I got the tire off, I'm gonna just double check to make sure that everything still looks good, the tape looks good. And wipe down all this old sealant here. Not seeing any issues with the tape, looks really good, so I'm gonna go ahead and put on the new tire. Okay, this is the Maxxis Dissector. It's an OEM. You'll notice it's in white lettering. It is not the normal 3C Max Terra or anything like that. It's just a standard EXO casing on here. We'll see how well it lasts. I had an extra tire lying around, so I might as well go ahead and get some use out of this since the other one was worn out pretty bad. So let's go ahead and put it on. All right, so the trick is to make sure you get it in the right direction, and usually it has to do with the logo and the placement of the drive side versus the non-drive side. So on the drive side is usually where they put the actual logos themselves, so you know you're going the right direction. So again, this is going to be going this way, the tire will be going this way, that's the forward direction. I like to align the valve stem, of course, with the Maxxis logo. So we'll go ahead and try that. We can get it straight here. There we go. I think that looks good right there. All right, one side on. Let's get there. Almost there. Got it. Okay. All right, now that it's on, I'm gonna go ahead and get it sat, or get the bead sat. All right, keeping the core out, I'm just gonna go ahead and use the compressor here. Make sure we get the right side lined up here. Just sit it on here until we get all the beads set in. Gira pop, there it goes. All right, so if you look at it, about 40 pounds right there. It is officially set in. All right, next step is we're gonna go ahead and put some of this orange seal sealant, and I use this little syringe tool here from Park Tool to go ahead and put it in through the actual valve stem, so that way I don't make too much of a mess. And according to the instructions, it's about 100 milliliters for a 29 size tire. All right. Go ahead and put the valve stem down. Put that in there. And that's all in there now. Of course, I always still make a mess. Okay, so that's in there. I can go ahead, we'll add some air, and then put the valve core back in. Tighten up the core again. All right, that's all nice and good. So I lost a little bit of air, so we'll just double check it. Went down to about 20 pounds, so I'll take it to about 40, which is way more than what I would normally ride, but it's just to let the sealant work its way into everything, and we'll leave it at that. And when the next time I ride, I'll go ahead and lower the pressure back down to its normal amount. All right, that is good to go. So let's wipe it down, and I'll clean off the rotor as well. All right, that looks good. All right, let's go ahead and stick it back on the bike. So before I actually put the wheel on, I'm going to go ahead and check the brake pads here. They actually look really good, so don't have to worry about that yet. So let's go ahead and put on a new tire and wheel here. I think we are just about there. We go. Okay, that is back on. We are good to go. And let's do one more thing real quick here. Looks good. All right. All right, that looks good. Put the clutch back on, and now let's go ahead and lube the chain. All right, when I lube the chain, I like to start from the quick link, work my way around. So let's get the quick link. There's the quick link. When I actually do the lube, I start from the quick link and work my way back. I do it on the bottom, and I just do the links inside here. It's a bit tedious doing it this way, but it does save me some money on doing too much lube. So I do get about, I would say, 2 to 3 rides before I have to apply more lube. I guess it all depends on the conditions, but in our dry desert, we can definitely get away with a few rides. All right, everything is properly lubed. Just gonna wipe down the excess. All right, so I went ahead and double checked all the pivot bolts. Everything seems to be tightened down pretty well, so no worries there. So as I stated before, I had an issue with a crunchy kind of sound coming from the drivetrain. I think it was just a dry chain, because everything actually looks like it's in pretty good condition. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and run it up the street and just go through all the gears, just make sure everything sounds good, and I'll let you know how it all turns out. All right, so I took it up the mountain here, came back, no issues with the drivetrain. Everything sounds really good. If there was any other issues, we'll find out soon on a more full ride, but right now it looks like it was just a dry chain. So this maintenance is something that I like to do at least once a week. Make sure everything is tightened down, checking your tire pressures, checking how the tire wear is. Obviously I don't replace the tire every week, but this was something that was needed. But everything is running quite well, so I'm really happy with the bike and with everything. Now, I do want to make a quick admission. The wiring harness had to be replaced in the bike. I was about 20 miles into a ride out in the middle of nowhere, and the battery just kind of died. The whole thing just shut down. And I was like, oh my God, I gotta pedal this thing out. So I started pedaling back, but then I took a break after a few minutes and said, well, let me go ahead and try it again, and it turned back on. So I got lucky and was able to get back home. So when I took it into the shop, they kind of explained it to me and how they kind of have a 3-step process when these types of issues happen. They first check the wiring harness. If something is loose, if something didn't get connected correctly, they're gonna look at that first. If it still has the issue, which mine did, after they checked the harness, they went ahead and replaced the harness with a new one. They sent the notification to Shimano, they sent it out, they installed it. Hasn't been a problem since then. Now, if there was continuing to be a problem, then they would actually replace the battery next. So the battery, then the wiring harness, and if that doesn't solve the solution or solve the issue, then they would look into the motor itself. So luckily it just seemed to be just the wiring harness, but I'll let you know if anything changes. The only other issue that I had was with the remote. Every now and then it would kind of go to the off position. And I'm not sure if that was just user error, maybe my thumb or my knuckle or something is hitting it and it's going to the off. But every now and then it would just go to the off. So I'll keep an eye on that. I'm pretty sure my hand was pretty far away from it, but you never know. But I'll keep an eye on that, make sure that there's not something wrong with the wiring going from the remote to the head unit. But so far it hasn't been any issues, anything major, like it hasn't completely shut off or anything like that. So we'll just keep an eye on that and we'll see how it goes. So until then, I want you to go out and enjoy the ride.